Hey everyone, it's Christian Harris here with another episode of Christian's Conversations. With today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Brandi Mello. So, Brandi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So, Brandi, really just here to have a conversation with you today to kind of understand what you're going through in today's job market, like everyone else out there. Share your experiences, and maybe people can learn something from that. Because I know it's a rough job market that everyone's kind of going through.
This is
So I
true.
think it's always good to hear what the experience is like, especially for someone. I'm similar to you. You know, you had your position from what I've gathered for over 20 years. So
Yes.
it's probably been a bit since you had to kind of get back out there. And
It's
things, I'm
very
sure we'll
different.
kind of cover
Yes.
that. Things probably changed since you had to do it 20 years ago to today. Um, so if you don't mind, give us a little bit of background about your career journey and what led you to where you're at today.
I've always been in customer service or been a customer person. I generally talk to people very easily and connect with people. I started out in retail, which is like the best training you can get for customer service, learning how to deal with all kinds of people, all kinds of situations, heck, from everything from very slow to running like crazy, trying to keep up. And I was in retail started out with Payless and then it went to Thrifty Payless and then went to Rite Aid. And so that was an interesting time in itself, trying to figure out what I was supposed to say when I was answering the phone. And then from there, I went to work for Shasta County in the public health department. Several of my classmates from my junior college, which was Shasta College, and Chico State, ended up working in the same office. So we were all joking about go to Chico State, work for Shasta County, and so that was a unique situation to be able to get into. And I learned a lot from them on the fly because getting into public health and in the lab, I didn't have any experience except for what I had done in college courses, which wasn't a whole lot. And so this was kind of a learn on the fly, learning what to do in the laboratory, and then from there, also learning the customer service side of it and how to interact with people on the phone that were looking for questions or had questions about what we did in the lab. And from there, also learning how to network with other individuals in my department, as well as other entities, hospitals, clinics, laboratories, other counties, other departments in counties such as their public health and environmental health, and learning what their functions were so that when questions came to me, I could therefore point people in the right direction to get answers that they needed. And at first I was kind of I would stand back and listen and learn what the best approach was and develop my own approach. And over the years, the responsibility of being the front person or first contact for the lab fell to me because I was more of the outgoing person in the lab. The laboratory people tend to be a little more introverts, and I was the introvert but more leaning a little more extrovert, and so I was kind of the contact for the lab. And I ended up having really good relationships across all departments, and we did a variety of testing. So there was water testing, which was more of the public and explaining how to fill out paperwork and what results mean and what the requirements are, and being the one on the phone to say, sorry, we can't do this because it came warm, or I need this information that you didn't give me. And then with other departments, some of it was water testing and some of it was, we did drug testing for a while. So I dealt with probation officers and from all over, talking to people that were working in the jail to get information on inmates that we were testing and being very delicate about that and getting the right information and making sure everybody was comfortable. And then we also, once that went away, then we ended up having COVID. We had actually an H1N1 hit, which was crazy, and a lot of different people to talk to and get information from and explain why I needed information from them. And then things calmed down a little bit. Then we had COVID that hit, and that was a extremely difficult time being a frontline person for the laboratory. There were a lot of questions flying at me that I didn't necessarily know the answer to, and it was trying to maintain calm with people and reassure them we're working to get information and instructions as quickly as we can. And for the first little bit of the pandemic, we were the only people doing the testing, so we were inundated with questions like crazy. People looking for information would go to the phone book, and the lab number was the first one that looked like the right one to call. And so I got all kinds of questions from all different sorts of people, and it was trying to keep track of who needed what and where they were, and were they someone in the public or were they in a hospital or what needed to happen. And so my manager at the time got rather familiar with me running to their office room and knocking on the door going, hey, I have a question. I need an answer. They're on the phone now. I know you're talking about it, but I need an answer now. And so that was rather interesting. And that situation with H1N1 and with COVID really transformed the work environment in the laboratory. Because COVID went so political, it really transformed the position, and leadership in the county got interesting and a little controversial. And so that's kind of where I had to make a decision to look out for myself. And that's why I'm in the position I'm at now, because I got to a point that I needed to look out for me. And that means changing what I was doing. And now I'm in a in a holding pattern until I can find something that works.
Well, that's good. It's like anything. Sometimes you, especially if you've been doing something so long for the same place, you have to take a break. I mean, regardless, obviously you throw in the pandemic, which I couldn't imagine what that would have been like working for a government agency at that time. But that would, I'm sure, definitely be you would need a mental health break for that. Uh,
Yeah.
what do you think some of the unique challenges are for people that work for government agencies? Forget the COVID side, but just in general, how many work for a government agency and then work with other ones? I'm sure that's challenging in itself.
It is. It is. It's different in that in the government portion of it, there's procedures to follow and people you can talk to and people that you aren't necessarily supposed to talk to. And a lot of times you want to need to go through a hierarchy to get to people. And I like to take the approach of I talk to the person I need to talk to. It's easier. There's less chance of getting something wrong or getting directed in the wrong direction. And that some people didn't really like that much, but I did it politely and just said, I understand that you may not know this, but can you tell me who does? And in the private sector, that's something I'm going to have to learn and figure out. Is I'm sure there's going to be ways that I'm not supposed to communicate with people and that kind of thing. But I think from working in retail, I think if you're honest with people and tell them what you need, generally you're going to get it. It's just a matter of having the right approach and asking the right question. And I think that can be a little difficult when you're coming from, this structure to it's a different structure. And that's going to be that's a challenging part, I think, of making that transition.
Yeah, I think if you work like anything, if you work for a good company or good people, I think you're right. Just being honest and straightforward. Hey, they'll get you where you need, regardless of
Right.
that. So I don't think it'll be different because, probably the one thing you did experience over the 20 years, if I had to guess, different leadership like throughout the 20 years, right?
Yes.
That's the one thing, right? So, I mean,
Yes.
you ran into that maybe more than you would in the private sector in some positions.
Yeah, I outlasted a number of managers and leadership, but they tended to be people that were in the department that just kind of made their way up, and so I still had a good relationship with them, and they knew that I came in early on in my career and learned as I came along. And so sometimes they'd even come to me to ask questions of, who over in Siskiyou, who do you talk to? Or over in Modoc, who do you talk to or who do you hear from? In the jail, who do you talk to? Who do I need to get in touch with? Because that they were coming in not knowing what to expect or who to talk to. And so that was kind of a fun advantage to having been there for so long. Some of the harder parts of outlasting those people was the difference in their styles. And so that was, some of them were very open to my coming in and saying, "Hey, I think something weird's happening. Can I look into it, or is there something that you can do to help me smooth this out?" And others were like, "Let us deal with it. You don't need to do that." And so that was rather interesting. And then there was a lot of turnover as far as line staff even, and trying to help them to understand, okay, I know you're new, but I need these steps to happen for me to be able to do my job. And so training them to look at the paperwork correctly or get the right information. They get frustrated with me too, just saying, oh, well, you should know this. No, I don't. I need you to get the information so that I can do what I can do so that I can get them their information back.
With many different leaders, what's the one leadership like rule or policy you think everyone should have that you want to work?
I think the biggest thing is open communication. Help me help you. Explain to me what you expect of me so that I can follow that and see if there's ways I can improve the interaction with whoever's on the other end of the phone. Restriction being having a script can be good, but maybe there's ways to change that script a little bit as far as somebody coming in with a new view or new experiences. And I think from a customer service standpoint, the clearer you can be with whoever's on the end of the phone or the other end of the email is crucial. And if you're handcuffed from that aspect, it can make it really tough. One thing I would like to be able to bring into customer service is the human side of it, and understanding what someone needs and being able to explain to them why I need information from them. People used to laugh at me because I always said I was mean, but I was nice about it, because I'd call them and say, hey, I need this information. If you don't give it to me, I can't help you, and I really want to help you. And so there were times that my coworkers would call, say, a clinic and want to get information. Well, they would get shut down because of their approach. And so they'd come back to me and say, I couldn't get da 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 da. Give me a minute. So I get on the phone and I'd call them and say, hey, this is Brandi from Public Health. I know we've called you for this information. Just give me a second. Let me clear this up, and then we're good to go, and I won't bug you anymore. And that seemed to be a good approach. I had times where people would call me and I'd say, hey, they didn't even I didn't even need to say who I was. It was like, what do I do now? So, I end up having a good rapport with people, and, that's what I would like to bring with me to wherever, or whoever gives me a chance.
I think customer, because I've done the retail, so like everybody, when I started out young, I was doing retail, and I think retail customer service is probably the hardest thing anyone ever has to do. Because
Yes.
the one thing people like to do is come in, and usually when they're coming in, if they're not buying, they're not happy, and who they take
Yes.
out on is the person in front of them.
And that's different. That's difficult to do. It's being able to maintain that smile. And my biggest thing was when somebody came in that was upset, or you become, I almost call it sweet over the top. So it's you take the wind out of their sails and they don't know what to do because you're not reacting to them being mad, but you're helping them. And so I had a couple of times when I had a long line and somebody would be just raging mad. They've had a bad day and we've done something that they didn't like. And I was like, I am so sorry that happened. Let me see what we can do about that. Let me know exactly what happened and let's get this figured out. And they would calm down and we'd proceed. And the person behind them would just be going, how did you do that? It was like, they're having a bad day. It's not my fault. They needed to be heard. And that's, they would, thank me and walk out. And you could tell just by the way they walked that maybe their day was a little bit better because they had actually been heard. And I think that's something that can be lacking in customer service. Sometimes it's, when I go into a store now, it's bugs me at times that people are standing there going, oh yeah, okay, I'm here to do my job. And I'm bummed and I don't want to be here. Don't portray that. Be there because you're there.
Yeah, I guess it's similar to being like a waiter in a sense. I've never been a waiter, but it's similar. If you've had the experience, you know what type of service you may have provided in the past. So your expectations are that's the type of service I should receive in a sense. I
Right.
mean, everyone has a bad day. I mean, just like
Exactly.
everything else. But, there are minimum requirements. I would, especially from a customer service rep. Obviously, 9 times out of 10, you may tell me no, whatever I'm trying to do. But the number one rule I think is letting that customer vent and being heard.
Right. Being heard, and if and it may be a matter of explaining exactly why what they're looking for can't be done. Or let me see if I can get you into talking to the right person that can maybe get you a step closer, maybe not be able to resolve it, but get you a step closer or be able to explain it better than me why I can't do something. And I think there's just so much frustration out there. And when you hear no, no, but don't get the response of why, it can really make or break any interaction.
And I think, unfortunately, I think companies are taking away the human touch side of it because, you call if you're calling in somewhere, and that's why everyone hates calling it automated, put all the information, and I finally get somebody, and then I'm having to repeat myself 12 times. And then
Right.
first person says no, whatever the case may be, fine, let me talk to your super. And
Right.
so, you know, that first person sometimes unfortunately gets the bad part because I'm already mad. I know you're going to
Exactly.
tell me no. So it's like, no, just give me your supervisor. And that defeats the
Exactly.
purpose.
And that was something I ran into because somebody would come to me with a question and I'd say, no, that's not how this works. Well, they didn't like that. So they would send somebody else to ask me the exact same question, slightly different, to see if my answer would change. I'd go, no, I can't do that because da 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 da. So, and I had people call the laboratory that was from outside of our jurisdiction because they've been handed off over and over and over and over. And I'm like, okay, I don't have the answer for you, but let me take your number and let me see what I can do because I know you've been handed around and I don't want to add to that list. And so I would, take their phone number and call another county or someone in the city or something to say, hey, can you give me something to give this person just to so they have an answer. I'd describe the conversation to them. They'd go, oh my God, I can't believe this person's been through this. Give them my phone number and I'll talk to them. And when I call that customer back and let them know, they're like, I can't believe you did that. I appreciate it. I know you didn't get the answer for me, but you've given me a direction to go. And that, that made me feel good to be able to help them out somehow.
Yeah, and I think going that extra mile with customer service, that's how you get like your if NPS score is above. People remember that. You may have not done what they needed to, but you've done something above
Something.
what something somebody else did. Is that something you think you always did in a sense, or was somebody like a mentor like kind of taught you like, hey, this is how things we'd like to see things done?
I think it was a little bit of both. The reason I got into to where the position I was in was because of my retail experience and having had a whole bunch of different kinds of things come at me at one time. And I learned to filter out what the important part was and what someone was feeling and trying to kind of combine the two. And then being in the lab and learning the technical side of it, I had a really good manager that helped to teach me what I needed to be able to know on my, how to work on my feet, or think on my feet, and come up with a solution. And he would listen to me and be in awe of handling a situation and calming it down and getting to the root of the problem. And so he would encourage me to keep doing that. And then, we'd have the person that would walk into the lab because they couldn't find the front of the building. And so it was finding out what they needed and where the right place was and say, hey, you know what? Come on with me. I'll take you over there. And that impressed them too. And so over time, I became kind of the info person, and it developed into from all over the department would call me to ask who to get in touch with. I ended up having responsibilities dealing with fiscal and doing reports because they couldn't figure out our system or didn't have time to, all the way over to calling vendors and saying, hey, we need to get this, we need it now. And this is why, this is what I have. Can you help me out? And just to try and keep things moving.
So take me back when you applied for the job 20 years ago with the county. What was that process like?
Well, I was actually working in retail I think it was still Payless at the time, and one of my former classmates had come in, and she was working in the lab and said, I have something you need to check out. And so she told me who to contact, and it was actually somebody else we had gone to school with. And so I went in and talked she was the manager at the time, and I chatted with her, and then it was a matter of getting my application in or getting my resume in, which I didn't have one. And so putting something together and just going in and saying, hey, I don't have a lot of experience, but I'm freshly graduated. I want to learn. I'm interested in learning what public health is, because that's something that a lot of people, I mean, I had no idea what it was. And so I went in as extra help. And it usually when a government agency gets you trained up, they want that person to stay. They don't want to have to try and find somebody else. And so that was beneficial from that standpoint. And someone coming out off of the street, they have to reintroduce all of this information, and they didn't really want to put the time into that. And the laboratory itself evolved rather quickly because we had a really small lab, and then we ended up building a state-of-the-art lab. And so everything ramped up from there. And it was nice starting from the ground up and knowing how to transfer what we were doing to the new location. It was very beneficial.
So let's fast forward to today. What's the process been like so far today compared
Man,
to obviously it's easy, much harder than 20 plus years ago, but what's that process
yeah,
look like for you?
it's been interesting. I wrote up my resume, and it was more of a list of things I did as opposed to what those skills mean. And so I have had a couple of rewrites done for me, and that's interesting. That in itself is interesting because everybody's got their own opinion on what a resume should look like, what should be on it, how do you describe what you've been doing. And it seems to me there's a lot of wordsmithing going on. So you're saying the same thing, but you're making it sound different. And I've never liked that ever. And so it's hard because you send out the resume, but then you don't get any human interaction based off of that. And I don't know if it's thing that, computer programs looking at it and saying, nah, or if it's a person looking at it going, nah, they don't quite fit. And then you get the generic rejection email that doesn't give you any feedback as to why that, your skills don't work or they don't look right, or it gets frustrating because it's like, just give me a chance to talk about myself. And maybe maybe I'm quirky enough you like me.
No, I agree. I got to the rejection letters today, although these were better because they weren't just well, I at least think they weren't the computer automated ones because there's actually a person's name on them.
Oh, yeah.
So I actually wrote back to him and thanked them. I said, I think this is strange to say, but thank you for actually replying back that I didn't, because that's one step above the computer generated message.
Yeah.
But, I said, so I thought it was a little bit better. So I was like, okay, you know what? And I told my wife, and I'm like, I'm going to thank them for that. And she's like, okay. But I think you have to. And I agree with you. The resume is interesting because you do have to take, like, I was talking, did another interview yesterday, and I was talking to the gentleman, and it had been a while since he'd looked. And we had one resume back in the day. We
Hmm.
would send that out to regardless of what job you may be applying for. It's like virtually the same resume. And
Right.
now you truly do have to tailor your resumes, which makes sense. Competition is extremely high, does not matter the positions you're going for. So you have to distinguish yourself somehow. And the only way to
Yeah,
do
and
that is through your resume.
it's been really interesting because I've been trying to kind of stick with the entry level, teach me kind of positions, and I it just seems like that would be the best way to get my foot in the door, and then say, hey, you seem pretty good at this. How about we try da 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 da? And because I did the same thing for so long, I mean, I'm fully aware that some of my skills probably aren't up to par, but I can update them relatively quickly with experience doing what I'm hired to do. And so I'm kind of like, okay, which direction do I go to make myself sound better, essentially? And I just kind of don't know.
Yeah, and it's tough because, like anybody that's out there right now doing this, you're getting unsolicited help in a sense.
Yes.
And I think based on your post, you tried some of that in the beginning, and it's like, okay, I don't need any of that anymore because it's either bogus
Yes.
or it hasn't really done much. But like anything, a lot of this kind of stuff is timing in a sense when you're looking
Yes.
for a job or anything. It's like
Yeah.
looking for something,
Well, and I think this day and age, it's the networking and finding that one person that either has something that you connect with them and they have something that they think you might be great for, or know somebody that knows somebody. Essentially, that's how I got into public health when I did, is because I knew somebody and I ended up knowing the other person as well. And so it was an easy transition. And with so many people being out there looking, it's hard to find that one person and making that real true connection to move forward.
Yeah, I don't think that hasn't changed. So it's funny, like you said, 20 plus years ago, it was really, in a sense, somebody you knew who you knew, and they were able to get you in front of somebody that could actually hire you. It hasn't really changed today. The problem is either we're applying for jobs that could not be based where you're at. So
Right.
you can't really like go down the street and knock on a door and say, hey,
Yeah.
it's Christian. I know you have an opening. Could I talk to you at least about it?
Yeah.
So then you have to take advantage of a LinkedIn or whatever platform you're using and say, okay, I want to work for ABC company.
Right.
Who is the hiring manager for ABC company? And then like sending out those personal. But I said that's where most people I'm talking to has seen success. 9 times out of 10, they've already known somebody at the company.
Right.
I
Right.
mean,
And my circle has been so local that that's
yeah,
where the difficulty comes in. Being in Anderson, Reading, a lot of what's up here is retail, and I really don't want to go back into retail and and try and relive that. I've done that.
yeah.
I want to be able to, going into trying to get into something remote's even harder, but that's where I feel compelled to go, is so that I would be working with a wider variety of people in pretty much any industry. I think the industry side of things really can be taught in some respects. Not the technical, computer support kind of thing. That's more of a knowledge based, I think. But being the person to direct somebody to that technical, I think is important. That's just as important as the support is.
It absolutely is because talking to people, it's a skill set.
Hmm.
I mean, like anything, some people are better at it than others. And if you're going to be, in a sense, a face of a company from a customer service perspective, you want to make sure that person can communicate clearly and then make people understanding whatever that may be. Like, here's why we're doing XYZ, or this is why you're going here. And if it's clear to that customer, is that they may not like the results, perhaps, but they'll at least understand them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you get off the phone, that's not always the case. And that I think that's where that frustration comes. But like you said, I mean, I've born and raised in Orange County, bigger. I was going to ask you, I think we might have crossed paths. I saw in your LinkedIn you went to Cypress College, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I
yes.
was at Cypress College during that time frame.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was there for a semester, would have been semester of, what was that, 90,
says
I graduated
92.
in high school 92, so it was that 93, 92, 93.
I graduated Western at 90.
Okay. Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh, we may have crossed paths at class.
Yeah, transplant to Northern California.
Yeah, no, so born and raised, haven't left. But the in theory, the advantage I have is I have more opportunities. Obviously, if you're in a
Right.
smaller community, like you said, you have primarily retail or maybe working for the government. Maybe those are the two big options for that community. I'm not sure.
It is. There are, there are a lot of private businesses and stuff like that too, but they're running into difficulty too, and that's the concern about, you know, going into, like the retail setting or sales setting is how long is that going to last, especially right now, because the economy's tough, and
Yeah,
it would be kind of disheartening to get hired on and then sorry. And so that's why I was, trying to look at something that I think is going to be around, which is, customer service is not really going anywhere. It's just finding the right slot.
yeah. What tools are you? So obviously, you're on LinkedIn trying to take advantage of that network, which I think is probably the number one network most job seekers are using. Are you using, or have you tried any other tools that you think that are helping in a sense?
I've tried Indeed, but unfortunately, that's where a lot of I've had a couple of, I would say, fake interviews.
Okay.
They're through majority of them are through texting or messaging, and it's like it sounds good at first, and then it just starts to go a little wonky, and then it's obvious that it's computer generated or it's someone trying to get your information.
Yeah.
I had the first two that I had were people that were saying, "Oh, this company is coming into the U.S. In your area," and it's like, wait a minute, I don't think so. And then I've had some odd messages on LinkedIn, or not LinkedIn, on Indeed, and I went over to LinkedIn and I'm like, these don't match up. And so I actually messaged the company and said, "You've got somebody that's trying to be you or sound like you, just so that you know." And they thanked me for letting them know. But it was obviously not them.
Yeah.
And so that gets weird trying to weed those out and
Did you
frustrating.
did you say since I found that out, do you have any openings I might be able to read? Really get in front of
Unfortunately, they were out of the country.
next time? Well, I gotta ask because I know you were at a show last. Tell me about the alpacas. Everyone probably asked you about that. As soon as you said it, I'm like,
Yeah,
I gotta ask.
we've been raising alpacas about 10 years now. I'm an avid crafter, and we got into it so that I could use their fleece, because I can't work. I have a hard time with wool, with the lanolin, and so got involved with the alpacas through some friends, and I loved their fiber. And then I learned how to shear, or how to head hold while somebody was shearing them, because you have to shear them once a year. And you look in their eyes and you're trapped. You're bound to get them. If there's a will, there's a way. And so we started out with just we were going to get like four or five, and then we lied to ourselves. We weren't going to get any. We weren't going to breed, and we bought a male, and we weren't going to show, and we showed. Then I ended up we joined the California organization, the California Alpaca Breeders Association, and I ended up being the treasurer. So we really truly lied to ourselves. But it's been fun. It's a very tight-knit community that's very friendly and very open. It's where I learned again some more networking. And so this last weekend we were up in McMinnville, Oregon, and there were somewhere close to 450 animals in the show itself, and a bunch of different farms from California, Oregon, Washington, all over, that come together. And so it's a really neat networking situation. And they one of the most emotional parts of the show was we do the national anthem at the beginning, and the gal that was going to sing it had a stroke, and so she was emotional about that anyway. And as she got nervous, she was having a little trouble, and we all just started we all moved in closer and just all started singing, and it was very touching, and a lot of people in the crowd were in tears, and that's just that kind of support and camaraderie that it's unique, in a lot of ways unique to alpacas, to the alpaca community. And that's the kind of work environment that would be awesome, is just there to help as many people as we can
Yeah.
and
Well, it sounds like it's
be connected.
even though you lied to yourself, but it sounds like it's a great outlet, like right
It
now,
is.
especially.
It is. I do a lot of spinning and making yarn. I've over the last few months have made a sweat. I made a vest and a scarf that were big hits.
That's good.
It's kept my sanity.
Yes, I can only imagine. So how many are you up to now?
Well, we have 20 on the property, and we did manage to just sell 5 as pets so that we can have room to increase our herd or improve our herd. And then they'll be leaving tonight. We've made a couple of purchases at the show as well from some really good friends of ours, and so it's ever evolving. It's fun. We have one girl that is pregnant and due any day, so it's kind of watching out the window going, is she in labor yet? So that's fun. It's nerve-wracking, but it's fun.
Couldn't ima I remember seeing those commercials when we were older, like, you'd be, like, late at night with the al and, people are always like, "I'm gonna buy an alpaca," and I think I know somebody, they might have them down in San Diego. I think they raise alpacas as well, because every
Yeah,
time you hear
yeah.
about it.
There's several down that way, and that's what's kind of neat about it is you end up running into people that you didn't ever expect to meet, and it's been fun to watch alpacas become more known. You see them on TV more than ever. And when we got introduced to them, I hadn't really seen alpacas, and then got to know somebody that had them. And they're kind of like they're kind of like potato chips. You can't just have one.
Yeah, yeah, usually people that that love animals, they start out, you start with one and you have a household.
Yeah, yeah. We have 3 cats and 3 dogs and 20 something alpacas.
That's a full-time job in itself, I'm guessing.
It is, but it's enjoyable. And if I've one thing that I've done over the last few years is if I've had a bad day, I go out there and I sit down, and they know I've had a bad day, so they just kind of meander in, and they'll just kind of start sniffing, and it calms me down. And when I'm calmed down, they just kind of flutter away. So
They sense it like anybody, right? They sense good or bad.
yeah, they're very intuitive critters. They pick up on your emotions very quickly.
If you had a piece of advice for someone that's looking to follow the same career path, like, from a customer service perspective, what would that be?
I guess be true to yourself. Look at the positions and see what the description, does it make you feel something? I've had some that have really just tugged at me and said this is where you should be, being the contact person for. I've tried a couple of mental health lines that talk about being empathetic and understanding and active listening and willing to learn. I think those are all extremely important attributes for good customer service. Yes, you need to make your quotas and have your scores and that kind of thing, but being a person is most important.
Yeah.
And I think that's could be some of the difficulty in finding something too, is just being able to be someone who listens and wants to help, and not necessarily on a time frame.
Yeah, it's call centers. Obviously, I would sell some of that product, so I understand this, but you have thresholds like everything else nowadays. It's not always about, I guess, taking care of the customer, doing the right thing. It's about like, okay, you got to get through X amount of calls within, especially in a call center environment, you have to get
Right.
through calls, and that's how you're
And that
judged.
and that would be definitely a steep learning curve at first, but I'm sure that would be something that I could easily acclimate to as well.
Yeah, you would like anything, any job, new position, or even in the same position, things change and you have to adjust.
Right.
If you're set in your ways, regardless what that is, you won't be happy. It's one thing to say, okay, hey, could we do it this way? And at some point, you have to realize whoever's in charge dictates how that thing's done. Even if you could make a great case and you could be correct, you do have to go, okay, if I have to get through 20 calls in an hour, whatever the case may be, I'm going to get through 20 calls.
Yeah, and I in my position I had to do that too, because at one point there were going to be some cuts, and I had to go from the lab to vital records, which is dealing with the birth certificates and death certificates. And that was like completely out of my wheelhouse, but I had to switch to that position for 2 years in order to save a position in the lab. And so luckily I had some experience as far as I had some anatomy and physiology, so I could kind of slip back into that. But that was a huge change. That was, basically doing lab stuff and then going over here to deal with births and death and rules and regulations speaking Greek. And that was interesting. But again, it's if when you're in anything in customer service, you have to be flexible.
And the nice thing too is when you do change like that, it kind of revives you in a sense. When you've been doing something so long, sometimes it's just repetitive, 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 and then you get
Yeah.
a challenge. You get to learn something new. Anytime you get to learn, it's like, okay, this sucks.
Yes.
But after a while, you're like, okay, now I'm a little more alive. I'm not just like in a zombie state in a sense.
Yeah, yeah. It's going back to the resumes, right? Went up, that was hard. It was hard to figure out how to describe what I did because I just did it.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to when people ask you, tell me, what you're good at. I can do the, where do you need to improve? Here's 20 things. We always can put,
You can always
point out our
improve.
flaws.
Yeah. And that that
Um,
that that gets challenging in itself.
yeah. How long do you have? It's like anything
Yeah.
else. Yeah. But we get everything done that we need to get done. That's really what the important part is.
Yes.
Last question. What's the one thing you learned that you weren't expecting from the job search market today in this time frame?
Boy. Um there's just so much. It seems like there's so much out there, but it's hard to filter through what is really available and what is just there. If that makes sense. I've seen some positions that I think this should be a no-brainer and quick and easy, and then it ends up being that it really wasn't something, or it's something it's been listed forever and just not taken down. I guess it's that I need to have a lot more confidence in myself than I do and just put myself out there and apply instead of being so focused. That might be what's keeping me back too, is being hyper focused on a type of position.
Yeah, sometimes you do have to, and realistically, the header customer service can fall under so many things. Obviously, with your experience, especially working for the government, you may think it's like, okay, it has to be kind of this tunnel in a sense.
Yeah.
But in reality, like most positions, what you did falls under a lot of different umbrellas. I mean, the only thing you didn't do, but you kind of were selling in a sense,
Yeah.
is you really weren't selling.
No.
But you had to deal with customers on a daily basis. You had to keep
Right.
clients happy. You had to do whatever the case. All those fall under that umbrella.
Right.
How you bundle it in a sense and how you present that story is the key on any of that.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I'm trying to stay as positive as I can, is I think all of those things that I did and the skills that I developed are really transferable.
Yeah.
It's just getting to that interview to express that, and pour it on me, I'll learn,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
And I think most the hard part is getting to that point, but companies understand that most new rules, well, excuse me, and I did hiring and certain positions I've had in the past. It takes you when you get a new job 6 months minimum, if not a year, to learn
Right.
a new position.
Yes.
Everyone understands that. They may not like it, and you may
I
still
like
have
it.
to do, your ramp up is quicker than that. But to get good at a position, it takes you about a year.
Right.
And people, as long as they understand that, it'll be fine. But you still have to hit your metrics or come close, and progression,
Right.
right? You just got to
Hmm.
progress. But I said
And
right
I
now,
think it's just showing that the potential is there.
no. Yeah,
It's I'm not there yet, but it's close.
yeah, give you a chance and you'll get there.
Yes.
You just ultimately, like everybody, give me a
Read the
chance.
tattoo. You can trust me. I will try.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, just let me try, and we'll go
Yes.
from there. Well, hey, Brandy, I appreciate the time. I know I said you took time with your busy schedule to do this, and I
Sure.
hope you enjoyed it. I said
I did.
I'm hoping this will help somebody, or at least make you, like I said, make you smile and get you not having to do something for an hour that you're probably going to do, sit on the computer anyways looking for jobs. So free up your time. So
Yes.
hope you have a good rest of your day, and
You too.
we'll talk in the future.
All righty. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.